So, hi, thanks again for coming to the podcast. I'm Helen Neale. This is Neurodivergent Nook, and we are going to be talking today about autistic energy. Just to introduce myself quickly before we start, I'm a counsellor and also autistic ADHD. And I'm here with Diane Franier, and she will introduce herself.
Yeah, hi everyone. Diane, autistic ADHD as well, parent, foster carer, previous head teacher, and now a SEND consultant.
Wonderful. So, autistic energy, neurodivergent energy. I don't know whether it's particular to being autistic. I think
Because we
it's
don't know, because we both got both.
we do. Yeah, and does it fall along all of those because neurodivergence is a big, broad brush term, isn't it? So, would maybe just talk about energy, but with the examples from our own personal lived experience,
Yeah.
which is obviously those, autistic and ADHD experiences.
Yeah.
So when we talk about autistic energy, what springs to mind for you?
So for me, it's that burnout word, isn't it? That's thrown around a lot. Um, I am an all or nothing person. And I think when I was younger and I didn't know I had ADHD or autism, I would just assume that I'd been, working too hard, or that I was, still ill from that cough or cold I had the other week, whatever it might be. And then, fast forward 20 years of being a mum intensely. Um, and then you just put everything down to being a tired parent, don't you? So not ever kind of catching myself and, going, is there another reason why, you've got all these commitments and a job and 3 children and whatnot, but actually you can't get out of bed. You haven't got a sore throat, you haven't got a temperature, but never kind of really working out what that was. I remember, you know, GPs diagnosing me, for example, after flu with post-chronic fatigue. Um, rather than all those opportunities that there might have been all those years to go, well, what else is going on with, that body? Why does this healthy, fit, woman in her 20s keep having these, responses after an event or after an illness, rather than her body is absolutely burnt out? She's clearly, completely overwhelmed, completely this, completely that, and needs a few weeks to rest. So yeah, that's kind of my lived experience of it, I suppose. Yeah.
So it sounds like there's that, and I'm kind of putting in my own personal experience here as well. So if it doesn't resonate, do say it's that do, which is driven by that hyperactivity, that ADHD, and then suddenly the oh crap. I don't. It's all gone. I've got none left, and I've not got the brakes.
Yeah.
And because I'm pushing and pushing through it,
It's too late, isn't it?
yeah, and it's too late, and then you hit burnout.
Yeah.
And I suppose there's I've spoken a little bit about this with other neurodivergent people. I suppose there's a wish to say, well, we'll never get, if we deal with this, we'll never get burnout again. But that's just not realistic, is it?
It doesn't work.
It just doesn't work like that. That because of the way that we're wired, I guess.
Yeah. And that's, if you weren't ever going to do that again, you'd have to be completely rewiring your brain, wouldn't you?
And you can't do that.
No, no, you really can't. I think, I remember about 4 or 5 years ago. So, about 4 years ago, after the pandemic, and I was a head teacher. I remember thinking, I need to take a couple of weeks off. I'm really, really worn out. Just completed 2 years of the pandemic in a school, and I'm going to say to my governors, I need a planned 2-week break. So I thought I was being really organised, rather than my brain and my body starting to kind of feel like it was shutting down. I ignored those kind of crisis signals and just like, no, I just need some time off. which resulted in 8 weeks of being off work, absolutely fatigued, ended up in A&E, doctors trying to throw all sorts of antidepressants down my neck, which I was avoiding. And obviously on reflection, knowing now that that was just absolute autistic and ADHD burnout from somebody who was trying to, manage a family, during COVID and run a school, with which, was obviously education was in crisis as well. And I remember saying to my dad, my role model, a few weeks in, I said, I don't think I'm depressed. I said, I just feel really lost. And I said, while you're all talking to me, him and the family, I just sort of said, I feel like I'm in a swimming pool and I can hear you above the water and it's all muffled, but I can't kind of get my head up to hear what you're saying properly. And it was such a strong physical feeling, like what I was describing him, that I can almost feel it now that, and the overwhelm and that burnout was so strong for so long that I worried it wouldn't go away. Yeah, which it did eventually. And I went back into my school and, chaos began again. But yeah, that was a scary burnout that I didn't know would last so long. I mean, I don't know whether you've ever
I,
experienced something like that.
I tend to actually see it in my family. My brother, who is has significant mental health challenges, and a lot of the time that mental health professionals look at him retreating
Yeah,
and feel that he's
yeah,
depressed
yeah,
or there's something going on with his mood, but actually it's self-preservation, and he needs that to I always feel like saying dial it down,
yeah, yeah.
because
Perception.
the sensory stuff is too much for him.
Yeah.
And he needs to be in a place where he just feels safe. He can focus on his special interests,
Yeah, yeah,
which might be,
yes.
whatever. For anybody, for him it's reading, and
Right.
and that is restorative. And
Mm.
and that seems to work so well for
For
him,
him.
but it can be
Yeah.
misinterpreted by those around him.
Okay. And, by the sounds of it, that self-preservation, he's just taking everything just back to that real basic, meeting those basic needs, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we don't live in a world that approves that, do we?
No, we were talking about, how do you step away from a head teacher role in a way that,
Yeah.
and that's because of the push for productivity for
Oh,
everybody, which
yes.
drives me
Yeah. Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. Rather than allowing that person to have that space to do that, and go through that process for however long that person needs. I mean, I felt, and I put that pressure on myself, which then kind of, I think, made the lack of energy even more so. That I needed to get back. I needed to get back. I was missing that meeting. I was missing that meeting. What about that child? What about that family? So certainly the first 3 or 4 weeks, I maintained that mental burnout. I continued that. Um, and it wasn't really until my body was like, well, I'm going to give you a migraine. I'm going to daily, I'm going to make your body ache. I'm going to make you exhausted. I'm going to reduce your stamina. Did I then go, okay, I can't actually physically go to work or think about work now. But on the flip side, my recovery that was about being mindful. That was about taking my dogs for a walk. That was about going, walking. Walking was my thing. And it was springtime when that all happened. So, watching the kind of the season change and just trying to be present. And I'm rubbish at that whole, at mindfulness practice when it is just being still.
That doesn't work, does it?
No, especially not the ADHD brain. But allowing myself to do it in a mindful way with walking and yoga
Yeah.
and maintaining that movement, that worked particularly for me.
And you could have mindful practice,
Yeah.
but it doesn't necessarily need to be, because and I have probably said this before. Anybody says to me, clear your mind, instant thing is, it just goes mad. There's so many things. If someone says that to me, the only way of being able to do it is to anchor myself with another sense.
Yeah.
And you're moving with your dog.
Yeah.
And I find that I can be mindful
Yeah.
when I'm walking, when
Same.
I'm
Yeah.
sort of trying desperately, and sometimes even, before a therapy session, I do like to try and ground myself if I can.
Yeah.
And even if it's just as simple as putting my hand on my chest and feeling that can help.
Yeah, without a doubt. And and if that gives you just that little bit more positive energy, doesn't it? You're ready to go in for
Yeah.
the next challenge ahead.
But I think it's the burnout. What concerns me is, obviously, you're talking about
Mm.
but we're talking about burnout in children,
Yeah,
and that saddens me deeply.
so much. And I see it particularly more in the last couple of years that I'm now working much more with neurodivergent teenagers. Um, Real genuine burnout that seems to be lasting longer than it does for us adults, because they're already, you've got to throw in their hormones and puberty and, and social media and peer challenges on top of that neurodivergent burnout. And, it's almost just too much,
Mm.
just too much for those children and teenagers to be able to manage. And of course, that's always been there. There's always been neurodivergent children and teenagers, haven't there? Um, but I just think with the pressures that we have today, that where we're not just, meeting our basic needs or going to school or we're going to work, that where is the time for those children and teenagers to recover?
Mm.
So if they're going home and, they're on their phone for the next 5 hours at home, then, where is their time to be naturally mindful?
And actually, if you're in an environment where you're perhaps struggling,
Yeah.
when I was a kid, it was kind of contained in the school building,
Yeah.
but with the phones, it's not
No.
anymore, is it? It's everywhere.
Yeah. And I see that in my own teenagers, that's that constant stress about even just another friend, that's eating up their own mental capacity. There's just no stopping it, is there? Um, if we're feeling exhausted from a day at work, hopefully we can, walk away from work and walk away. But I think, yeah, children, and young people don't have that ability to now, unless, they're only allowed on their phone an hour, a day or whatever it might be, depending on their parents' rules. Um,
And even then, if you're, you know, have a child that's,
mm,
PDA,
yeah,
then that kind of
yeah,
thing is really hard, because it's a demand, isn't it?
yes,
That rule
yeah,
and all the
all the
rules,
rules.
they're all demands, aren't
Yeah,
they?
yeah,
And that makes that even more complicated to
yeah,
navigate.
yeah,
And I do think that, we're, as adults, we're in a position where we are perhaps more, some of us anyway, but not all of us, to think about the restorative practices that we
yeah,
can do for our autistic energy.
yeah,
And as carers, maybe to try and, where someone is perhaps non-speaking, maybe to try and, again, that curiosity and looking at the communication to see, well, what is it
yeah,
that is helpful and supportive,
yeah,
for the autistic ADHDers that I'm working with,
yeah,
or looking after.
and looking after. Yeah, and I've got a lovely example of that. I work with a young man who's 10, who's pre-verbal, now saying some words, and has autism and likely ADHD. And yeah, and working and spending time with him and learning how that I can give him those opportunities to remain energized and remain regulated so that he doesn't, feel burnt out after a busy day, for example. Um, and think about, what I think he likes or what he can show me that he likes.
Mm.
And for him, it's running. Um, and you'd think, oh, well, how does that not get you burnt out if you're running? But, for him, that obviously clears his mind. So it's about finding a park that's got safe fences and boundaries all the way around it so that he can literally kind of, run sporadically and, and dart everywhere. And he's really happy again, and he's calm.
And that's wonderful to
Yeah.
see,
Oh, it's
it's the
gorgeous.
joy that
Yeah,
we can experience when we are
yeah,
connected with
yeah.
those things. And I think sometimes there's a lot of focus around, building energy. I don't even know if that's a thing, but people, you know what I mean.
Yep.
In and we maybe think, well, we need to be social. But actually,
Mm,
sometimes that connection, particularly with
yeah,
neurodivergent people, it might be with something different.
yeah.
And with him, it's the physical exercise. With many, it's their special interest.
Yeah, yeah,
If autistic ADHDers, autistic people,
yeah.
that's really restorative. It really helps
Yeah,
regulate,
yeah, yeah,
and that can help with
yeah,
burnout and levels of autistic energy.
yeah. I think, one thing us autistic people love is animals, isn't it? And I think that is a
Typically, yeah.
great way. I didn't mean to make a sweeping statement, but obviously
No.
lots of us do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that is an amazing way of reducing burnout, you know, even if it's just, stroking your cat or your neighbour's cat or taking your dog or somebody else's dog for a walk. Um, that is just such a mindful way of thinking about the animal rather than yourself, getting all of that oxytocin, from stroking and cuddling animals. I think that is an amazing way of reducing burnout and giving back some energy to you,
Yeah.
and getting that positive energy, from those animals as well. I mean, all of the children and young people that I work with that have autism all, happen to love animals. And I use, animals in the coaching and tutoring that I do. And it makes such a difference, even just the energy in the room as well, that those children, those young people feed off. Or, if they've got a dog in their lap while we're having their session. So yeah, there's kind of natural ways like that, isn't there, to support children and young people to, reduce that burnout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's another form of connection really, isn't it? The
Yeah.
connection with the animal and
Yeah.
the feeling of
Mm.
belonging, I suppose.
Completely that, completely. Um, I I'm about to add to my collection of animals, of dogs and cats and hens that will get into 2 pygmy goats. So I will be able to let you know in another podcast how that works
How the
out.
goats have worked.
Using that as emotional support animals for some of the
That's a
children that I
wonderful
work
idea.
with. Yeah, and I think, and again, isn't it? It's if you're doing that kind of thing, gone down a bit of a rabbit hole talking about animals now. I'm very conscious of that. That provides, it provides energy for the children that I spend time with and that I work with or that I care for. So for me, that's a great strategy
Mm.
that I found that works for not all, but lots and lots of the children. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much. I think it's a good time to finish. And I
Thank you.
think largely we've covered the experiences around burnout, or maybe
Yeah.
we'll talk about some things, maybe a little bit more about autistic energy theory, like spoon theory and things like
Yes,
that,
yeah, that'd be good.
which we can do on another day. So thanks so much to everybody.
Thank you.
And we hope that you've enjoyed that, and maybe you'll see you again soon.
Yeah. Please write comments and ask questions. We'd really
Yes,
appreciate that.
really do. And tell us what you want us to cover.
Yep,
Actually,
absolutely.
next
Otherwise,
time, that would be great.
that would be really helpful.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.